Laura and James Laura began unpacking her suitcase and wondered when her husband Sean would arrive. He surprised her with a cruise to the Bahamas to rekindle their marriage. Speaking of surprise, he had only told her about it last night. All she had to do was pack her bags. Sean had cleared some vacation time at her job and informed both of her parents the only thing she hadn't been able to do beforehand was to call James her lover. Laura was glad that soon all the hiding and lying would be over. Her affair with James was over. It was time, considering the likelihood that she and Sean would soon have a child. She was glad, however, that she had managed to have an affair before the baby was born. It was a one-off first and last affair to confirm her attraction to other men. Reflecting on it, she wondered why she had agreed to date James in the first place. He was handsome and charming, and the sex had been arousing at first. But the love hadn't been. At one time, she had believed that there had to be an element of love to justify the need to have a lover now. She was forced to admit that it was just lust. The sex was good, but definitely not worth risking her marriage. Thank goodness they'd been careful. Neither Sean nor James's wife Donna had found out anything better to end it now and not tempt fate again. Laura hoped that Sean had been truthful when he'd said he was ready to have children after the cruise. Having children was one reason, though not the main one for getting married. She wanted to be a mother. So badly mentally, she remodeled the guest room twice, once for a boy and once for a girl. The best part of her life was about to begin. She was so happy the sound of the key coming through the door sent a flutter through Laura's heart. She planned to greet Sean with the tightest hug and the most passionate kiss she was capable of. When the door opened, she exhaled. "James, you can't come in. Sean will be here any minute. Get out!" Laura James shouted. "Laura, what are you doing here? Donna should be here soon. This is our quarters." Neither of them seemed to know what to do except tell the other to get out. After a few agonizing seconds, James smacked himself on the head and said, "Oh, now I get it. This is supposed to be our quarters, yours and mine. What are you talking about? Don't you understand? They found out for some reason your husband and my wife decided to give us a lover's cruise, perhaps? In gift to our marriages? No, it can't be. It doesn't make any sense. Sean told me that he had arranged this cruise, and he said he had to meet me late because of one last business detail. He told me that this cruise was a way to strengthen our marriage and prepare for having children." Donna told me the same thing, almost verbatim. Something about the way she told it to me sounded a little off now. "I know why. Are you sure? What if they show up? Show me your ticket." After studying the piece of paper, James explained, "Look, we're booked in the same cabin. You can wait before you unpack if you want to see if Sean comes, but I think we're screwed. I'm calling Sean. This must be some kind of crazy mistake." She dialed the number, but got nothing. A second try yielded the same results. Damn it, the phone company must still be updating them. "That's why I didn't call you last night. Who told you the phones were down?" Sean, guess what? Donna told me last night when I said I needed to call someone. The phones probably don't work because they cut us off from the phone plan. They knew we'd try to call each other." That can't be right. I was going to end our affair after the cruise. I want my husband and my marriage. I want to have children. Shaw's children, quick. Let's get off the boat. It's too late. The ship has already left the dock. We've got a couple days to get to our first port. I'll disembark there and go home. I'll beg him not to do anything stupid. How will you get home? I'll catch the return flight. And how will you pay for it? With a credit card, of course. So you're assuming our credit cards are valid? I hadn't thought of that. Of course, he's not that sneaky. Go to the treasurer's office and see if you can charge anything. I'll go with you and check mine, too. Their trip to the bureau office confirmed James's prediction. Their credit cards were declined. They went online and found that half of their joint accounts had been cut off. ATM cards could have provided access to the joint accounts. Had they not been canceled, the treasurer allowed them to call their spouses, but both received a number no longer in service message. "So, Laura, how much cash do you have?" "About $300. You, about $250. It doesn't look like we're going to be doing any side trips. I think we're stuck until the end of the cruise." "I assume you have a return ticket." "I do. What am I supposed to do? Now this is going to be the worst week of my life." "How could I have been so stupid?" "Well, we can enjoy the cruise. No one knows what's in store for us all." "I want to do is cry and think about getting my husband back. That's fine. I'll unpack and go see what I can do for free." "You don't think we're going to share a cabin?" do you, Laura? We've been having sex for months when we thought our spouses didn't know anything. What's so special about sharing a room when they know? Well, maybe Sean would be more forgiving if I told him we didn't share a stateroom on the cruise. You really are delusional. Good luck with that story. Laura and James shared a stateroom and a bed for the cruise. Laura agreed to snuggle with James on the nights he stayed in the stateroom, but no sex. He found another woman who invited him to her cabin for a couple nights. Laura did nothing but eat, sleep, cry, and prepare her speech. When she saw Sean, she expressed optimism about Sean's forgiveness. James rolled his eyes instead of laughing at her naivete. Their luggage was taken by bus to the airport on the way back. They sat side by side. They hardly spoke at all at the baggage claim counter in their hometown. James saw a man with a sign with his and Laura's names on it. The man said he had been hired to take them home. Once James and Laura got into the car, the chauffeur handed each of them an envelope. You've been served. I thought you were the driver that too. I was paid to drive you around and serve you. You must read the letters from your spouses. I'll take you both to 1353 Westwood Avenue. That's my house. James said, what about the lady? I was told to take you both there. The answer may be in the letter. In each envelope was a letter with separate divorce petitions, Laura and James. We hope you both enjoyed the cruise. No, if you think that treating the two of you to a cruise was some kind of sign of affection, dropped the idea. Sean bought the cruise tickets before I even found out about your cheating. They were non-refundable after Donna and I got together to confirm horn counseling for both of us. I think the term is the same for a woman as it is for a man. We came up with the idea of sending the two of you on a cruise. We needed time to get our affairs in order, pun intended. We have a divorce attorney in common, which would probably be a good idea for the two of you as well. At least it would be cheaper. Getting the letter is the beginning of the 90-day separation. It will allow all of us to get used to not being married to our current spouses. Instead of having 4 whole houses, we have decided that Donna will move in with me. Laura can move in with James, in case you're wondering. Donna and I have not developed a romantic relationship, not even revenge sex. It's not because Donna and I don't find each other attractive. It's because we don't think we should have sex with anyone else until we get divorced. What a weird concept, not sleeping with anyone other than your spouse. I think I've heard that somewhere before. Oh yeah, our marriage vows, or were they just marriage proposals for the two of you? The next 90 days of separation is what we propose to use to negotiate the division of assets. Donna took everything she wanted out of her house. Most of her stuff went into storage. Laura, all of your stuff is boxed up and in James's house. Oh, before I forget, there are some things we didn't leave for either of you. All of the wedding photos and albums have been thrown away. If you need them, you can look for them at the city dump. Hey, you ruined our marriage. It seems like a fair trade to destroy the wedding photos. Obviously, marriage didn't mean the same thing to you as it did to me. Please spare us the excuses from the Cheater's Handbook. There is no excuse for what you two did, and you did it over and over again. Forget about counseling, at least marriage counseling, unless you both think it will help your future marriage to each other. But there's another thing about whether a cheater who marries a cheating spouse can ever trust their spouse. We know they couldn't, which is why we don't need marriage counseling. We do need to talk about asset allocation. We didn't ask for anything out of the ordinary in the petition. Basically, it's 50-50 for me. And Laura Donna has a prenup that prevents James from getting much. I can see that half is unfair, but I can't expect anything better if we go to court. Is it fair for Laura to get half when she committed a crime and I didn't? There must be more serious consequences for the two of you. Or you may not feel punished if you are not punished. You may believe that you will get away with it again, whether you get married or marry other people. What punishment to give you to Donna and I have been discussing for hours. By the way, James, that 20-year-old scotch you've been saving is great. I'm sorry, but the bottle is now empty. Donna was very creative in her suggestions. However, most of them were illegal. Here's where we left off: copies of photos. Videos and recordings of the two of you in the throes of sexual bliss will be distributed to everyone in our families, schools, churches, neighborhoods, and anyone else we can think of. I hope this has gotten your attention. What we really want to do is reinforce your desire to settle the terms of your divorce as quickly as possible. Some may see our offer as a threat or blackmail. We see it as an incentive. We have also discussed whether to sue the company you both work for. They don't have a fraternization policy, and we have no proof that your dating took place in the office, or while you were working. Too bad. We could use the money. I think you're lucky in that regard, communication. All future communications should be done through our attorneys. We both have new phone numbers that only our attorneys know. Our attorney contact information is listed below. We suggest 1 to 2 meetings where we will try to iron out any differences. There are things like insurance, real estate loans, mortgages, child support, etc. that may be transactions that we exchange rather than split in half. These sessions will be for asset calculation only. We do not expect excuses, apologies, explanations, or requests for forgiveness or advice. Donna and Sean Laura cried the loss of her husband, and the loss of his future children was tormenting her heart from the inside out. James tried to comfort her. His depression didn't go away until he saw his house boxes and boxes of Laura's belongings filled his living room. All the pictures of Donna were gone, as were most of her belongings the first time he really realized it was real. His wife was gone, and he was stuck with a woman he was only interested in. When they were in bed, Laura gathered her basic belongings and the clothes she would need for a couple days. Where's the guest bedroom? The guest bedroom, honey. If you stay here, we'll be sleeping in the same bed. And I don't just mean sleeping, I'll be ripped to shreds in a divorce. Donna's dad made me sign a prenup caught cheating. I get nothing. It's your fault I got caught. You owe me a lot more sex than you've given me so far. Or what makes you think it's my fault they found out? It might as well have been you. We both thought we were being discreet. I don't know how they found out, do you? I just know I was very careful. That doesn't change anything. You're either in my bed or out the door. I choose the door. She packed some things and put them in the car. Sean at least brought the car to James's house. What are you going to do with my other stuff? I'll give you 72 hours, not a minute more. That should be fine. Laura was quiet for a moment and added, I regret my role in hurting both of our marriages. I wish you luck with your divorce after checking into the motel and getting a good night's sleep. Laura got ready for work. She looked forward to the daily routine to take her mind off her situation. The distraction didn't last long. Laura met her best friend at work. Debbie found out about the cruise when Sean gave Laura the day off. He told her that Sean and Laura would reconnect in preparation for having children. Laura, since you have almost no new tan, I'm assuming that you and Sean have been busy in the cabin making babies instead of the wide smile Debbie expected. Laura's face crinkled and she cried. Laura ran into her office. Debbie followed her. The cruise story, the letter, and the divorce petition were shown to her friend. Then both women cried, Sean and Donna. Well, Donna, I think they're already back. How do you feel about what we did? Terrible and satisfied. I hate to put an end to my marriage, but I love that we didn't let them get away with it. I guess our marriages meant nothing to them. I feel like I've been fooled my entire married life. Well, probably not that long. For all we know, they've only been together a few months. See, do you think their desire to change started only a few months ago? I think their undying love for us started dying a few months after the honeymoon, if not what happened that suddenly caused them to cheat. I understand your point of view. I still can't understand why she did it in the first place. I had no idea she was anything other than a devoted wife and a woman willing to have children with me. Thank God I caught her before we had kids. It would have been a real mess to get a divorce when a child was involved. Do you think James will fight the divorce or not? If I put up a pen-up, he'll probably contest it. Otherwise, he'll get almost nothing. He only brought about $10,000 or so into the marriage. Do you think pictures of them going in and out of a motel room would be enough to prove adultery? On the one hand, I really wish we had video of them actually having sex. On the other hand, I think a sex tape of them would burn my brain. The pictures probably wouldn't be enough evidence, at least on their own. I need Laura to testify for it to be a sure shot. I don't know, it sounds weird, but Laura has pretty high moral standards. Except for cheating on her husband, she could cheat on me, but she could also tell the truth about the affair. Can you talk to her for me? Maybe let him play it by ear for now. You handle your divorce, and I'll handle mine as far as I'm concerned. There's no rush, by the way. How long do you think you can keep me here before you kick my skinny ass out? As far as I'm concerned, you can stay here as long as you want. I was surprised at how comfortable I was living with you and how quickly we established a routine. I enjoyed our conversations in mutual comfort. Sean was quiet for a moment and smiled, and upon close inspection, your ass isn't skinny. Thank goodness you noticed. Now, I don't have to put testosterone supplements in your food. I've been trying really hard to get you to give me a little lift every once in a while. I need reassurance that I'm still a desirable woman. I've noticed, but please don't stop trying. They were both smiling. It was over a month before Sean and Laura arranged to meet. Since James hadn't seen any pictures, he disputed the claim of proof of marital infidelity. Donna's divorce would take long. Each of Sean and Laura's attorneys came with a list of items to negotiate. Laura's attorney was allowed to go first. My client is asking that all checks and savings be divided equally between her and her husband. She proposes to keep the car and the loan to her. His name should be dropped from the title. In return, she offers to remove her name from the title of his car, and he will take the loan. Both parties will purchase their own automobile insurance. As for the house, she offers to either sell it and split the AITA, or he can buy it back by paying her half of the equity. As suggested by a certified real estate appraiser, she would be excluded from the contract if he retains ownership. Sean's attorney responded, "We have no problem with those terms. Her husband has decided to sell the house. He will put it on the market within 90 days. What else does she want?" Laura's lawyer spoke up. "My client will only agree to your terms if your client speaks to her privately for an hour." No, Sean spoke up. "Then my client asks that 12 counseling sessions be required if your client refuses to participate. We will petition for $3,000 a month in alimony and loss of equity in the home. You know, we can get both with the right judge." Sean's attorney told him that local judges like to give counseling and allow the wife to stay in the house. While she probably won't get $3,000 a month in alimony in the house, she will probably get a lot more than he was suggesting. The attorney further advised Sean to accept the 1-hour deal and be happy that there are no worse demands. My client will give his wife 1 hour, provided she signs the agreement in advance. Sean, will you agree to talk to me instead of just sitting here? Sean was angry, but he agreed. He never lied to me. I accept. When Sean and Laura were alone, he told her at 3:32, "We'll be done. I deserve it. You promised to listen to me." To Sean nodded and stared at her. "Sean, I have sinned against you, and God, I'm not going to make excuses for myself to you. I indulged myself when I convinced myself that everything was okay. I lied to myself and to you and to God. I've cheated. I've broken my marriage vows. I betrayed the person I love most in the world. I deserve to be punished. I think you'll probably agree with what I just said." Sean nodded again. "The question is, the punishment is divorce too much punishment? Is a second chance too much? Please imagine a scale of fairness. As for divorce, put the GRA of my adultery on that scale. It makes the negative side go down. Is there anything else you want to put on the negative side? Were there other reasons why I wasn't a good wife to you besides having a lover? Have I ever disrespected you and our marriage? Has anyone ever come to you with negative words about my behavior or tried to tell you that I spoke badly behind your back? Have I ever turned you down for sex even when I was having an affair? Did you ever doubt my love for you until you found out about me and James?" Sean shook his head negatively. "Sean, is there anything you can mention about me that can go on the positive side of the scale, the side that can give me a second chance? Do you believe I was an evil when you married me? No, you were the most perfect person I've ever known. That's why your betrayal hurt so much. What did I do to turn you into a cheating?" He had a hard time not crying, Shan, honey. It wasn't you. You were everything I needed. The problem was I convinced myself I wanted more, and I deserved it. What about our family life? Did I do anything wrong? Laura, you've become not only my wife, but my best friend. I wanted to hear about your day when I came home. You seemed to want to hear about mine. I felt guilty about spending too much of our budget on things for me while you hardly ever asked for money. I like talking politics with you even though you're almost always wrong. He made them both smile. I loved our conversations about kids and our future. I never ever checked up on you when I was on business trips. We loved each other too much, or so it seemed to me. I know you said it was all your fault, but I can't help but wonder if I took you for granted or did something else that made you turn to James. Now he was crying. Look at the scale. Sean, is it anywhere close to equilibrium? Do you have any love for me to put on the side of second chances? I know it's hard to believe any promises I make after breaking our marriage vows, but I swear on the lives of our unborn children that I will never betray you again. Please give me a second chance. Sean thought about his choice until he had a headache. Laura, it will take me some time to get that image of you and James in that motel room out of my head. I'll agree to have my attorney hold the divorce papers we just signed on one condition: if you agree to testify against James in Donna's divorce. What will I testify about James? Challenged the photos of you and him leaving the motel room as evidence that you had sex with him, legally. He's probably right. You would have testified that you had sex with him, so you lied when you said you had a video of us having sex. Well, there's nothing we can do about it now. Sean, I have no problem telling the truth about this affair. Of course we had sex in a motel room. I'm sorry I jeopardized 2 marriages, but I won't lie to save James from punishment. He's not worth lying for. He and I both deserve to be punished. I just wish it wasn't a divorce. I'll tell my lawyer. Shan, what does this mean about our living arrangement? Are you going to let me back in the house Donna's living there now? It's going to have to wait. I don't want to kick her out until she has a place to stay, but I also promised to put our house on the market. If you postpone the divorce, you won't have to sell the house. I'd be willing to wait for Donna to leave while you and I spend time together. Maybe we should date again. We're 2 changed people. We need to rediscover ourselves and our relationship with God. Help. We will go back, fall in love, and be ready to fill our home with children. I'm not sure I can fill a house, but I'd like to. I like the idea. I'll tell Donna. Donna wasn't as pleased with the news as Sean expected, but still forced herself to smile and said thank you. When James heard that Laura was willing to testify that they'd had sex at the motel, he capitulated. He was surprised that Donna had agreed to pay off his car loan and credit card to compensate him for the loss of his half of the equity in their home in the current housing market. The sale of their home would barely cover the loan, and the seller's fees. Alimony was not part of the prenuptial agreement. Sean was puzzled that Donna was being so lenient and asked her about it. I really wanted to burn the bastard. His betrayal hurt me more than anything ever had then. I looked at you. You were badly wounded, but you couldn't be vindictive towards Laura. Scale of justice made me change my mind. James and I had a mostly positive marriage before their affair. My dad thinks I'm crazy, but I feel much better about my divorce than I would have if I had taken more violent revenge. Thank you, Sean, for everything. She put her arms around him and kissed him passionately. Sean was surprised. The kiss warmed him and challenged his notion that Donna wasn't the kind of woman he should be interested in sexually or romantically. Donna, I'm sorry, Sean, but I can't about you so much. Sometimes it kills me that I can't show you how much I care about you. I hope you can forgive me. Forgive you. I wanted to rip off your clothes and have sex with you. It's the horniest I've been since this whole thing started. Damn girl, you sure know how to kiss, so you want to try some more than anything. The problem is I'm trying to figure out if I can give Laura a second chance. How can I do that if we're having an affair, first of all? If we're dating, it's not an affair right now. We're both legally exempt from marriage vows. Second, who says you can't give me the first chance at the same time you give Laura the second? Shah's logic and libido competed for control of his body parts. I need time to think. I'm going to bed alone and see if I can fall asleep. Sean headed for the bed. The choice of options didn't get any clearer or easier. Donna knocked on the open door. She was wearing a nightgown that became transparent in the light of the hallway. Sean, can I sleep next to you tonight? I'm having trouble sleeping. I promise to be good. Please, even though he knew it was a bad idea, he gave in. Okay, if you promise. She slid into bed next to him and put her hand on his chest and her foot on his leg. Donna kissed his cheek. Thank you. It took Sean a while to fall asleep. It was a restless sleep with many dreams. He was on a nude beach with Laura. They were drinking umbrella drinks on a mat under a palm tree. Laura looked at him with lust. She started kissing him and gradually made her way down to his genitals. I thought you were going to be good. Are you saying it was bad? I guess I'll have to practice a little more. Then it's not fair to Laura. Haven't you heard in love and war? All is fair. I guess I should thank you. That was the best I've ever had. It makes you wonder what else is possible, doesn't it? It does, seriously. Sean, at least we'll be living together for a while. Don't you want to see if we're sexually compatible? God, you have no idea how much I'd like that you showed me a little bit of your body, and I stayed horny most of the night. The only thing that bothers me, other than feeling like we should wait until after the divorce, is that you are living with me because your husband is cheating on you. What happens if we find out we are sexually incompatible? Would it be hard for you to stay here? I don't want you to have to move until you're ready. Hell, you're putting my feelings ahead of your carnal lust. She smiled broadly. Damn it, Donna. What am I going to do with you, doggy reverse cowboy missionary? James relented and stepped back. He was sent a copy of the divorce decree. There was no further contact with him. Sean had an active social schedule. He enjoyed meeting Laura and began to remember what attracted him to her in the first place. She didn't pressure him, but made it clear that she was willing to regain his trust in any way she could. Donna had no intention of moving, even though James had left the house he shared with her. Sean told Donna that they needed to talk. Donna, I am extraordinarily happy. I have a beautiful, intelligent, caring woman living with me who has given me the best sex life I have ever had. I have also reacquainted myself with the woman who was the love of my life for years. She hurt me, and I have a hard time trusting her. I've rekindled enough feelings for her to wonder if I'm giving you an unfair advantage when you live here. And we have said sex, there's a vacant house. Why aren't you going back? I'm not going back home, because as far as I'm concerned, this is my home. I want to be with you. Where you and I are together is home. If you think I have an unfair advantage by living here, good for me. I'm fighting for the man I love. I don't understand why you would want a woman who betrayed you when you have a woman who has never cheated on you and never will. I don't want to demean your sense of justice as much as I hate the idea I'll move out. I plan to win Laura away from your love, regardless of our living situation. I trust your judgment. Even though you haven't said it, you love me, Sean. I know you do. I'll wait, but I plan on us getting married and having kids. Now let's go to bed for one more night, and I hope you're not going to sleep. Months went by. Laura felt better, especially after learning that Donna had moved out. She was disappointed that Sean had never met her at their old house. Now they hugged and kissed. But there was no sex. She hoped he remembered their time in bed. Most of their time together had been spent reliving good memories of their courtship and marriage they never discussed. Her affair. There was a 2-week break before Sean and Laura met again. Laura was sure he was going to announce his decision. She felt she had reason to be optimistic. She sat down at the conference room table. Sean was there, but so was Donna. Laura sat holding back tears. Laura, I wanted you both here because I am constantly mentally and physically moving between you. You both need to hear what I have to say right now. Our current situation is unfair to both of you. I don't think it's fair to me either. I have come to a decision, Laura. I have been able to forgive you. Our last time together reminded me of the reason I fell in love with you and how great it was to be married to you before you cheated. I've been tempted to resume our marriage under certain conditions. Of course, the problem is I can't forget while I myself may be willing to risk you remaining my wife. I can't risk the mother of my children being unreliable, as bad as it would be for us. Without children involved, it makes me physically sick to my stomach to think of what would happen if we had children, actually. Laura, I made that decision a couple months ago. I've been working on a new divorce agreement ever since, Laura. Because of the wonderful years you gave me for most of our marriage, I want to give you a chance to support yourself so you can prepare for how to move on with your life. I have no doubt that you will find a man willing to take the risk and give him children. I have sent your attorney new settlement terms that are much more favorable to you than the previous ones. I wish you the best, Laura, I really do. Sean and Donna got up to leave. Sean, can't you? Her ability to speak left her when she saw the slight bulge of Donna's belly. She knew she had lost what she wanted most. Anne and her sister Joan were returning by car from their parents' house. Jay and Anne's husband usually drove the car, but he was held up at work. Anne smiled at Joan and said, I had to drive. The Miata. Joan shook her head and said, and where would we put all our stuff? Anne loved her Miata convertible. She named the car Mary and was inseparable from her for 12 years. The car was both her parents' 18th birthday present and her high school graduation. Anne looked at Joan and said, G and I always have only the essentials with us at the traditional family reunion. Everyone asked about John. Anne's father was especially disappointed that John couldn't make it. Anne and Joan were 2 of 5 daughters. Their father had no sons. That said, no one knew which of the sisters was the favorite daughter. But there was no doubt about who was his favorite son-in-law. John called and apologized, promising to visit them. Soon, John was tall, dark-haired, well-tanned, and handsome. He was also smart, loving, and funny. He worked in the distribution center of an international company in Fredericksburg, Virginia. They had been together since 9th grade. John and Anne attended colleges that were 200 miles apart, but still stayed together. John always joked that they went to different colleges together. Anne looked out the window. She remembered all the kids asking about Uncle John. John loved the children, and they loved him. He was their favorite playmate at every family reunion. Joan looked at her sister. She felt something was bothering her finally. She said, "Okay, let's get it over with. What's going on with you?" Anne continued to stare out the window. Joan looked away from her for a few minutes, but then she told her sister again, "You'll feel better if you share what's bothering you with someone you know. You can tell me anything." Anne lowered her head and said, "I'm having an affair." Joan was shocked and fell silent. Coming to her senses, she asked, "Are you cheating on John?" "Oh my God." Anne looked up with tears in her eyes and said, "I don't know why myself." Joan reached out to take her sister's hand. "Tell me everything," she asked. Anne answered, "It started 6 months ago, right after our family meeting. It was David Stevens from my office. He'd been flirting with me for a couple years, and one day I just said yes." Joan clarified, "Is this the same David Stevens I met at one of your picnics last year? The same David Stevens you warned me to stay away from, the man you called an __, who chases every skirt?" "Yes." Anne said, "I thought I'd be safe from him." "There's no way I could fall in love with someone like that," Joan asked. "But you fell in love with him." Anne shook her head and said, "No, of course not. It's just that I used to think he was an __. Now I know that for a fact. I broke up with him on Friday at lunch." Joan looked at her sister. It was lunch in a hotel room. Anne looked angrily at Joan and said, "No, and no, it was in a restaurant. Joan asked, you had sex with him, but you didn't like him. That doesn't make any sense." "Anne, I have to ask again." Why? Anne hesitated for a moment, then answered, "I think I freaked out when I saw John playing with the kids 6 months ago. We were just discussing having children of our own. The house was almost paid off. Our cars are paid off. We have no credit card debt. Joan, we have almost $20,000 in a college fund for kids who weren't even born. We plan to really do it when we turn 30. "John is 30 now. I'll be 30 in 2 months, Joan asked. "You don't want kids?" Anne replied, "I always thought I did, but now I'm scared. I've been afraid of becoming a mother. I'm afraid of losing us, me and John. I'm afraid of losing myself. I love my job. I should have given up the pills 6 months ago. And does John know all this?" Joan asked. Anne shook her head sadly. Then Joan asked another question. "You didn't give up the pills," Anne said quietly. "At first I didn't want to stop taking them. After I started with David, I had to stay on them. I couldn't risk getting pregnant with him." Joan got angry. "You slept with him without condoms. You know his history. How could you not think about protection?" A weeping Anne said, "He doesn't like rubbers. I don't like them either." Joan said to her sister, "John thinks you haven't taken birth control in 6 months. You need to stop this madness. You need to tell John everything and beg his forgiveness. He loves you, and he can forgive you, but only if you're honest and upfront with him." "You know, John, a secret will kill your relationship," Anne replied. "No, Joan, I could never tell him." "Do you remember Bob and Carol Wilson?" Joan nodded. Anne continued. "Bob was having an affair with someone from work, Carol found out, and their lives have been a living hell ever since John and I had several conversations about Bob's infidelity. He couldn't understand how someone in love could cheat. I tried to defend Bob. I told John that if they really loved each other, they could save their marriage. I told him that they could put the pieces of their mosaic together. This affair might even make their marriage stronger. But Joan, I can tell you for a fact that he doesn't look at it that way." Joan continued to listen to her sister. She realized that Anne was just digging herself an ever deeper hole. She asked Anne, "Tell me about David, __. Stevens, I can't believe that sex with him could be so unpleasant." Anne replied, "Sex with David is normal. He's aggressive in bed. But with David, everything was done hastily, and again, we never had much time to get together with John. It's much better. It was always great reflecting aloud." Anne said, "I tried to make David more like JN. Why would I do that? When I already have JN, unfortunately, John was becoming more and more like David in bed. We haven't had all day lovemaking in a couple months." Joan was disturbed by this news. She asked, "And when did your sex life with John start to change? Was it around the same time you and John started discussing the Wilsons?" Anne hesitated. "I think so." Joan remarked, "The JN I know doesn't like gossip, but I think he tried to get you to end your affair for the first 3 months. And for the last 3 months, you've been defending your affair." The realization struck Anne. Oh God, no, does he really know? Does John know about David? Anne picked up her cell phone. She needed to talk to JN. She needed to hear his voice. The call went straight to voicemail. Joan asked, "How did he communicate with you when you talked to him last night?" Anne realized that John hadn't called last night. They always talked before going to bed. Even when they were separated by thousands of miles, they talked. Anne said to Joan, "He didn't call me last night." Joan asked, "Tell me about your last communication. Did he seem okay?" Anne replied, "He seemed normal. We talked about Bob and Carol again." Joan, he said it was too late for them. He said that if Bob had come clean, maybe he would have had a chance. And continued, "We talked about Mary, about my car. He asked me if I would fix it, if the windshield cracked. I told him that of course I would. Then he asked me if I would fix it, if I had fender damage. I told him, yes. He then asked me, would I fix it, if the car was totaled in an accident? I told him no. I remember telling him that the car would never be okay again. It might look new, but it would never drive like it used to, and he told me that Bob had ruined his marriage to Carol." Joan was crying now too. She said to Anne, "Pull yourself together. We don't know for sure what he knows, but we do know that you absolutely have to talk to him." Joan pushed a little harder on the gas pedal. They pulled into the driveway of Anne's house. There was a light on the front porch, but John's SUV wasn't there. Anne shouted fearfully, "He's not here." Joan judiciously replied he could have parked in the garage. Open the garage door. Anne knew his car wouldn't be in the garage. Their two-car garage was reserved for her Miata and his 1988 BMW 325C convertible. She used her cell phone to open the garage door. The two women looked at the nearly empty garage. John's convertible was not in the garage. Anne's Miata was gone, but there was something in its place. In the spot where the Miata had been parked before lay a 4x4 feet mound of mangled red metal. On top of it lay a large envelope of heavy paper and knew the contents she had prepared. Many such packages herself at her job. On top of the envelope was a metal emblem that read, Mary. That emblem had been on the back of her car when they replaced the Mazda emblem with Mary a few years ago. On one of the emblem, screws hung. John's wedding ring next to the emblem were her birth control pills, and picked up a paper lying to the side. It was a handwritten note addressed to her. She read the short text. "Dear Anne, I'm sorry that everything I did wasn't enough for you. I hope you and David will be happy together. I just wanted you to respect me enough to tell me that to my face your Mary is that metal junk you see in the garage. Let me know if you can put the pieces of that mosaic back together again. I've always loved you, Anne, and I will always love you. I hope you find the happiness you're looking for in your life. John R.S., you have some kind of STD. Please get yourself tested. Our doctor says it can be pretty nasty if left untreated. You need to see him on Monday. He says you will need to tell the health department about your lovers." Anne handed Joan the note and sat down on the floor. She couldn't cry. She couldn't make a sound. She couldn't move. Joan sat down beside her and held her tightly against her. Anne's cell phone rang. She answered it without looking at the caller ID. "John?" She cried. "No." "It's your mother came." A voice from the phone. Her mother continued. "John just left us. He brought your father some parts for the car and said he came to say goodbye. He didn't want to tell us what happened. He said you should tell us yourself. Why is he leaving you?" Anne told her mother I had an affair. I slept with another man. Anne's mother was silent for a few moments. Then she said disappointedly, "I can't believe you could do something like that. Is Joan with you?" Anne replied, "Yes, Joan is here." Her mother then said, "I have to go. Your father needs me and he's crying. I've been married to him for 40 years and this is only the second time in my life I've seen him cry." Joan helped Anne into bed. Anne got up in the night and went downstairs to sleep on the couch. She couldn't sleep in their bed without him. The two of them spent a restless night the next morning. Anne was up and ready to face a new day. She took a shower and woke Joan up. Anne said, "I have a busy day today. Will you help me?" Anne knew her sister's answer. She thought about J.N. He had no real family to lean on. His parents had died in a car accident 20 years ago. He had one brother, but that one was in the military, and they only saw each other once every couple years. The fact that he was facing this alone broke her heart. The sisters went from the house straight to the doctor's office. He asked the necessary questions as professionally as he could. Anne felt guilt in every answer she gave. The doctor wrote several prescriptions to treat her venial disease. Then they went to Anne's workplace. She talked to James Johnson. He was the partner she worked most closely with. She told him the whole story. He told her to take a week's vacation. The firm would represent her in the divorce. He promised to solve any work problem while she was away. As she left Johnson's office, she headed down the hallway to where she saw David Stevens talking to a couple of paralegals. When he turned toward her, Anne kicked him in the groin with her knee. She picked up a heavy copy of Black's Law Dictionary and kicked him in the head. David Stevens flew across the table and landed with a clatter and said, "Expect a call from the health department." Anne turned around and saw Mr. Johnson. She said to him, "I apologize for the mess. Will the firm represent me if I am arrested?" Johnson smiled and nodded, then said, "There will be no police report." Then they went to John's workplace. Anne knew that John had an automobile trailer and had taken all the possessions he had with him. He must have left the neighborhood, but she had to find him. She went to John's boss's office. Anne had met Fred Jennings at several company events. He was a good boss and a good man. His secretary was Doris Miller, the nurse of the company. Doris saw Anne and said, "Hi, Anne, Fred has been expecting you. Please come in and have a seat." Anne saw the sadness in her eyes. Anne and Joan entered Fred Jennings' office and sat down in the chairs offered to them. Anne aggressively said, "I need to know where John is. Does he still work here?" Fred calmly replied, "Anne, you have no enemies here. I've always liked you, and I think very highly of John. He said you could come here. He authorized me to answer all your questions." Fred continued, "John has moved to Charleston, Scotland. He's the new Southeast Regional Manager. This is a big promotion for him. We first talked to him about this move 6 months ago, but John turned it down. He said you two were going to have kids, and he wanted you to be closer to your family. He also knew that the new position would require a lot more time to work. Then, about 2 months ago, he asked me if the position was still open. He said that the pay raise would allow you to quit your job. He also thought you two might want a change of scenery." Fred stopped and looked at Anne. He added, "Johan is a great worker, but he's a bad liar. He told me what was really going on between you two. I had hoped you two would move in together, and I'm so sorry it didn't work out. John isn't scheduled to report to the new office until next Monday. I can give you the address and phone number of our branch office there, but I don't know where he's staying in Charleston." Anne stood up and reached for Fred's hand. She said, "Thank you, Mr. Jennings." Fred replied, "Good luck. Anne, we all wish you nothing but the best for the future." The sisters went to lunch at a small diner down the street from her office. As they ate, Anne felt the stares of some of the members of the legal community. She knew there would be a lot of rumors and gossip, but she didn't care now. Anne told her sister, "He gave me every chance, didn't he? He was almost begging me. Why didn't he just say so? Why didn't he ask me to stop?" Joan looked at her sister. "Did you ever give him any sign that you might stop?" They ate and went back to the law office. Deborah Mayon, the best divorce attorney in the firm, was assigned to her case. Deborah read the divorce petition and the proposed property settlement. She looked at Anne and said, "This property division agreement is extremely favorable to you. He leaves you with a house that seems to be almost paid off. In addition, he has only withdrawn $25,000 from your joint investment and bank accounts. You get to keep your 4001 account. The arrangement is better, I think, than we could have ever hoped for." Deborah paused to watch Anne's reaction, then continued, "Your husband is asking for the following. He will take the 2 cars. He drives a 1988 BMW 325 IC and a 2018 Toyota RAV4. He will keep his 4001 account. It looks like it's a little bigger than yours. He also withdrew $5,000 from your main checking account and all the money from an investment account he called the Baby Fund. That fund has $20,000 in it. The value of your other investment accounts is more. The last item is a request for you to return your maiden name." Joan hugged a sobbing Anne. Deborah Mayon felt a tear roll down her face. She had always liked Anne. She was familiar with her husband, and they seemed so perfect together. Deborah had seen so many failed marriages in recent years, she wondered how anyone could make such a marriage work. If these two had failed, she knew it was unprofessional, but went around her desk and hugged Anne. The 3 women cried for lost love. There was nothing to fight about in a divorce. Deborah brought up the destruction of Anne's car, but John's attorney pointed out the unequal division of property. Mayon sought counseling, but the request was denied. John worked out of the area, and those sessions would have been impossible. 4 or 5 days later, Anne found herself in a conference room to finalize her divorce proceedings. It was the first time she had seen John since he had left her. He tried to look nice and calm, but he clearly wasn't with Anne, where her parents and Joan, her parents, had insisted on being there, but Anne wasn't sure if they showed up for her or JN. Anne and John greeted each other politely and courteously. Anne asked John, "Can we talk privately for a minute?" John nodded and turned to the lawyers. "Can we have a few minutes in one of the conference rooms?" Deborah led the couple down the hall to an empty room. Anne began. I'm so sorry I hurt you. I've been trying to figure out why I cheated on you. The only answer I have is that I was afraid of the changes coming in our lives." John shook his head and said, "And I was excited about the changes coming in our lives. I thought we had the same dreams for our future. Do you remember what we promised each other before we got married?" Anne nodded slowly and answered, "We promised to always talk to each other. We promised that we would never let anything come between us. We promised to always tell each other the truth." Anne said sadly, "I was afraid the children would hurt us, you and me as a couple. I was afraid they would ruin our relationship." John responded sharply, "You thought children would hurt our relationship. You cheated on me with another man to fix our relationship?" John calmed down and continued, "If you had told me your fears, we could have faced them together. The truth is, you didn't want to face change. You did the one thing you knew would end our marriage." Anne said, "You should know that David was never a threat to our marriage." JN looked at Anne and replied, "I know he wasn't a threat. You were a threat to our marriage. I'm sorry I couldn't save us from you." She knew he was telling the truth. There was nothing more to say. Anne walked over to John and hugged him. John returned the hug, and the two former lovers snuggled together for several minutes. They left the room and went back to their lawyers and family. The papers were signed quickly as they were about to leave. JN turned to Anne and gave her a key and a piece of paper. He said to her, "I have some of your things in the storage room. You need to go there today or tomorrow before your lease expires." JN hugged Anne's mom and shook her dad's hand. He promised to visit them as they asked. He hugged Joan and thanked her for being there for Anne. John turned and walked out of Anne's life. Anne wanted to just go home, but her father insisted they go to the warehouse. Her father opened the door, and the four of them stared at the contents. There was the Mary parked there in all its glory. The Miata looked like it had just been waxed. Anne checked the back of the car for the emblem. It was in place. The car had the personal license plates, and Miata Anne read the note she found on the windshield. "Anne, this is the real Mary. The car you found in the garage was an old wreck I found in a junkyard. I wanted you to feel my pain, but I couldn't take Mary away from you. Remember when we made 2 emblems for that car? I hope you two have many more happy days together. Love, John R.S." Mary needs to be insured before you get behind the wheel. Anne's father, Sedge, called me 2 days ago and told me about your car. He wanted to make sure you got it home safely. Anne drove the Miata home. She decided to take a chance and drive 2 miles. She put the Mary in her usual spot in the garage and turned off the ignition. Her family found her crying. They were waiting for her in the living room, but they knew she needed to cry. The funny thing about life is that you often relive an event that you think you can never relive. Anne went on with her life and dove head first into her work. A couple years after her divorce, she applied and was accepted to Georgetown Law School. She rarely drove her precious Mary. The joy she had once felt was gone. She preferred to drive the Toyota Corolla she bought after JN left. She often talked to her parents. When she asked, they would tell her they were talking to JN. Anne wondered if he ever asked about her, and the answer was usually in the negative. The day of the family reunion approached, and Anne spoke to her parents again. Her father asked, "Is it okay I invite John to the reunion?" She paused and replied, "Dad, it's been almost 5 years. I know how close you two were. I don't mind if you invite him," her father said, "even if he brings someone." Anne closed her eyes and said, "Yes, Dad," at the family reunion. Anne watched John walk into the yard. The last 5 years had been very kind to him. He looked happy. John was accompanied by a pretty woman and 2 children. The children appeared to be between 8 and 12 years old. Anne looked at the woman carefully. She was pretty tall and slender with long black hair. Her breasts weren't very big, but she had slender legs. The woman had a good figure, but she seemed to have problems with her postpartum tummy. The two new children quickly disappeared into the crowd of other children playing. Anne thought this would be a good time to introduce herself as she approached the couple. John turned to her. He said, "It's good to see you again. Anne, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Marie." The pretty woman held out her hand. "Nice to meet you, Anne," she said. Anne replied, "It's nice to meet you, Maria, John, and you look good." "Who are the two little ones that came with you?" Maria replied. "These are our children, William. He is 9 years old, and Serena, she is 11. They were so excited to come today. Neither John nor I have a big family. Thank you for letting us come." John added, "I adopted and fostered them. When we got married last year, their father was killed in Afghanistan a few years ago." Anne smiled and touched John's arm. "I know you've always wanted children. I'm happy for you, for both of you." Maria asked John to go check on the kids and bring her a plate of food. Jan looked at Anne. "Can I get you something too?" Anne shook her head and sat down next to Maria. Maria said, "I'm sorry to send John away, but I've always wanted to meet you. John has told me so much about you." Maria touched Anne's arm. "He said good things, Anne. He was so in love with you. I was jealous of you for a long time, and now?" Anne asked. Maria smiled at Anne and answered, "My jealousy turned to anger when he told me how you two broke up. I was angry because you hurt him, but then that was replaced with sadness when I realized the emptiness you left in him. He's the most wonderful man I've ever met, but I know he was once even better. I tried to put all the pieces of the mosaic together." Anne replied, "I'm really sorry. You can't imagine how much I wish I could change what I did, but you seem to have done a great job with it." Maria shook her head. "No work, Anne," she said. "I failed miserably. I tried to help him, but I wasn't the one who saved John. Your father was the greatest help to him. He always treated John as if he were his own son. But the real credit goes to William and Serena. The more time he spent with them, the more he came alive. Children won't let you hide inside yourself." Marie placed Anne's hand on her stomach. "Heck, be a wonderful father to our next child," she said, and added before Anne could ask, "I'm 4 months pregnant." Anne hugged Maria. She told her, "I'm so happy you saved him. I never could forgive myself for what I did to him. The realization of what I did haunted me." Anne felt a weight lifted off her shoulders. She had been in therapy for over 4 years, but this one moment seemed to be the cure she had been looking for. Anne looked at Maria and added, "I have to tell you, not only did you put his mosaic together, you helped put me together as well." John soon returned with 2 plates of food. Anne's father followed John with the drinks. Anne asked her father, "Can you sit with us for a minute?" Anne's father replied, "Sure." Anne said, "There is one item left unresolved in the divorce. I think we need to settle it now." The father looked embarrassed. A half smile seemed to play on Maria's lips. Anne continued, "John, we are divorced, but I don't think we've resolved the issue with my family. I think we should have joint custody, you. And now, Maria and the children are part of that family." Dad laughed, stood up and hugged Anne. Maria cried as she also hugged Anne. John said, "Thank you." Anne replied, "Don't thank me. You don't know how hard work they can be at that moment." Anne thought to herself, "Well, I may have lost a husband, but I gained a brother. There was a big difference in those kinds of love." Anne chuckled, thinking that Dr. Williams would enjoy talking about this the next time she had a therapy session. 3 days later, Anne thought back to meeting Maria and the kids as she drove to class. The breeze fluttering her hair was wonderful. As she moved down the highway, she lowered the convertible top of Mary's car and turned up the radio louder.